All right, I'm in my free Codepen account, and one of the things that you might figure out really quickly is that you only get one project with a free account. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. So if I go here and I go to create something new and I say new project, one of the things that you're going to find is that um, it's not going to allow you to create more than one project. All right, and that's just something that you need to be aware of. All right, so if you're going to use this free project, you should use it to the best of your advantage. So typically, whenever you have a project, of course, it would be you would have one project for one project, right? But since we only get one project root folder, one of the things that I'm going to recommend that you do so that you can maybe have multiple different folders up here is that you're going to make one root directory that allows you to have multiple subdirectories where you can kind of cheat a little bit and use those subdirectories kind of as little test project folders. All right. I'm not going to recommend that you use these for any kind of really huge projects or anything like that, but it's really good for getting some testing done where you need to have like different files that link to one another. So I want to show you how to get started over here. Down below, if you scroll on the left side where it says new directory, you're going to go ahead and create a new directory. And for the project root folder, you can call it whatever you want, but just make sure that it's something that's sort of moderately generic. Like I might just call this root. Let's call it Codepen root, even better. And the reason I'm calling it Codepen-root, don't put a space in there. Anyway, Codepen-root is because then I'll know that if I ever download my project, it will have Codepen root, so I'll know that, okay, that's my free project. That's not actually like my individual assignment or whatever. All right, so I'll go ahead and commit to that. And you'll see that up here I've got my root. So if I select it, it kind of opens the folder. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. It was like a little closed folder icon, and now it's an open folder icon now that I selected it. Right. So if I click it again, see how it closes it? I'm going to open it up again. And the reason I want to show you that is because I want to open it, but then I want to go and put a new directory down inside of it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're going to create subdirectories in here every time we want to do a new quote unquote project, right? Even though this technically is supposed to be one project, every project would have its own folder. And so far, just so that you can really understand the difference between a pen and a project, a pen is just a little quick, test HTML thing that you're doing, and it'll just save it as a little quick snippet of code that that you can go back and refer to and play around with. Whereas a project in Codepen is something a little bit more sophisticated in that it has a folder and then it's got a bunch of different files inside of it that can have relationships with one another. The pens by themselves don't really have relationships with each other, right? They're not allowed to do that. You would have to have an actual project to do something like that. And so anyway, let's just go ahead and set this up, and I think that then you'll start to see perhaps a little bit better why I want to do this. Let's say that for this example, what we're going to do is like make a test website where we've got some different pages that link to each other. All right, let's just do something as simple as that. So maybe what I'm going to do for my own kind of nomenclature or my naming convention is that perhaps I can just start anything with the word test or T, or like come up with your own device that you're going to be able to remember very easily. I think the one I'm going to use is PROJ for project, and I'll use PROJ dash, and then the project little project test that we're going to do right now would be page linking. So we'll just say page dash linking. All right, so that I understand later that that's exactly what this was. It was a project where I was experimenting with page linking. So if I zoom in so that you can see this right now, I've got the Codepen root is open, project page linking is inside of it. If I want to put files that are inside of project page linking, I need to click it so that it looks open again. All right, and then I want to come down to where it says new file, and I'm going to create a new file instead of a new folder, and I'll create that new file, and let's call this we'll do dogs, cats, and fish or something like that. We'll do dogs.html, and then I'll just hit enter, and it creates a new file over here for me. And here's the thing, it's got all this stuff grayed out, and this is, let me lower this down here so you can see the everything. It's all grayed out, and it's got the full document structure for an HTML minimal file. But it's, if you try to select it, you'll realize it's not there. It's just sitting there with the blinking cursor, and it's because this is just suggested what's going to happen. It's not actually there in the file yet. And so we actually need to be able to put a full document in place before we get started with the doc type, the HTML tags, the head. This is, as I said before, this is different than the pen, because remember, anytime we would make a pen before, it would just assume that it was everything that was supposed to go inside the body tags. Well, in this case, there might be some other things that we would want to do because it's a full project, like make our own links up in the head to CSS files or to JavaScript files or whatever, right? And so it gives us the full document. But the thing is, it doesn't, for some reason, well, I know why, it doesn't assume that you're going to necessarily want the doc to be just the way it is, so it doesn't preload it for you. What it does at the bottom down here, let me sort of blow this up so you can read this a little bit better. It says, or you can type HTML:5, then press tab to generate a basic HTML document. Let me zoom out a little bit. You can read that in its entirety. Now, here's the thing. You're going to have trouble doing this if you set your settings up the way that I originally told you to set it up, because one of the things that I had you turn off was this thing called Emmet, E-M-M-E-T, which is exactly what this thing down here is, HTML:5. It's like just sort of like a little coding shortcut for this little plugin called Emmet that will allow you to do shortcuts so that will generate code for you. And so we're going to need to turn that back on if we want to be able to use this in our project. So before we do anything else, let's just jump back over here into our little avatar, and we're going to go down to where it says settings. These are the global settings that we're going to look for. And you need to scroll down to where it says Emmet, E-M-M-E-T, and you want to make it active. If yours is already deactivated, you want to activate it. So do that, scroll back up, hit save all settings. All right, and then what we can do is we can jump back over here to our dashboard, and we're going to choose that project again. So go over here to projects, choose your project. All right, and now that we're back in here, we'll be able to use that HTML:5 shortcut to generate a document. So go ahead and get inside that file that you just created. Mine's called dogs.html, and I'm just going to type HTML:5, and then don't hit enter. If that's a habit, make sure to hit tab, and you see it automatically generates the document for me with all of the required stuff. And it has some other things that are not necessarily required, but they're really good things to have. For instance, this thing that says meta name equals viewport, blah, blah, blah. All right, this is important for responsive design, which we have not talked about. We'll get to this later this semester. These other things are also best practices, and they're going to be really useful later. But anyway, so now we've got a bunch of stuff that we didn't have before. In fact, when we were using the pens, we didn't have anything because there was an assumption that everything you typed was going to be happening here inside of a body tag. Well, because if you exported it, I showed you in a previous example, it would automatically put your entire pen inside of one of these full documents nested inside the body tags, because that's what gets displayed in the browser. Well, in this case, it's giving us the full document, all right, as I said before, so that we can do other stuff with it. Like, for instance, I can go up here and I can name the title whatever I want it to be. So we'll call this page dogs, and yeah, we'll just call it dogs. Now, anything that we want to add at this point, we're going to come down here into the body and we're going to make changes there. I'm going to pull my browser window up because this is where you're going to be able to see changes. So if I go down here in the body and I start typing, right, let's save. All right, and then it shows up here. So you do have to actually, this is a little different than that live preview mode before. For the free version, you're going to hit save all and run. and then it will allow you to see it down here. And if you want to see any changes that you make, you have to actually hit this refresh button. So for instance, if I go over here and I get rid of part of this, right? Now that it's actually a project, I have to hit save every single time, which is the real way that it is in the real world whenever you've got documents. You can't just get a live preview all the time. All right, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, now that you've got a little bit of this other stuff under your under your thumb a little bit, you've done a little bit of HTML, so now you should feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Let's go ahead and we're going to put just some really simple markup here. We'll do an H1 tag, and we'll go ahead and end that H1. And inside of the H1, we'll say dogs. Okay. And down here, you can type in a paragraph tag, for instance. We'll say this is the dog page. In fact, let's say below is a picture of a dog. Okay. And then let's go up here and hit save all and run. And this should update down here, and it did. And I know I said before that you might have to hit this little refresh button to get it to refresh the preview. If you hit save all and run, it saves it and it does the refresh. But if it doesn't refresh for some reason, you can also try to hit this little refresh button down here. All right, now, oh, and it's also so that if you wanted to click and go to a different file and select it, then you would hit refresh and it would update it to show you what that page looked like. All right, now here's the other thing is that I want to put a picture of a dog here. All right, so here's the other problem with not paying for a pro account is that if you go down here to click assets, unlike the pen, you don't get the ability to just click and go pick those picture assets from here the way that you did before. All right, and so it doesn't allow you to upload them, and it doesn't give you really easy access to those picture assets that you had really easy access to when you were doing just like your regular little pens. So one of the things that you can do though is you can open up a new browser window and you can go over here and you can type dogs, right? And we're going to look at pictures, go to images. And the next thing, once it loads, that you can do is go where it says tools and we'll click on size, and it doesn't matter. If you're just trying to get some general picture, you know, we can look for a width, let's say that's no larger than like say 400 pixels wide. Okay, and it's going to load all these pictures, right? So this is going to be exactly 400 pictures. So let's say that we want this little dog picture. All right, so if I click on view image, it takes me straight to the picture of that dog, and I can copy this URL. So I'm going to do that in my clipboard. You can right click and do copy, or you can do a keyboard command. And we're going to make a little image file here. So we'll do open brace or open bracket, and we'll type our IMG tag, and then hit space, right? And then you can type src for source equals, all right? And then we'll just paste in that web address, and then we need the alt text. We'll say alt equals, and then we'll put dog with food bowl. Okay, and then we just need to end it, so we can end that. And just remember, you don't have to have this / here if you don't want, but I'm typing it in the event that you like that particular convention. And now if I go and I hit save and run, it should update it for me, and it shows the picture of that dog. Okay, so there is a workaround, even though it doesn't give you quick and easy access to the assets in the project the way that it did in the pens. No big deal. We'll just grab some test files from Google. Now here's the other thing too, is that if later you decide that you want to you know, be able to use this, then what I would recommend that you do while you're at it is just go over here to that picture of that dog, and you might as well just download it right now in the event that later you decide you want to use it. So let's do that really quickly. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say save image as, and it's going to just find, you know, automatically go to some place on your computer. So do this not in a haphazard way. Do it in a kind of controlled way. So let's just, I'm going to, on my desktop, I'm going to make a new folder, and I will call this prog dash I think I called it page-links. Okay, I think that's what we called it. Let's just double check here. Anyway, I'll just keep it like that, page links. And then inside of that, we'll make a new folder that's called images. All right. And then I'll just keep my picture of that dog inside of that images folder. All right. And let's see, yeah. Oh, page linking is what I named it. Okay, no big deal. We'll go back later. Anyway, so I downloaded that picture of that dog, so I'll have it on my computer for future use. Now, let's just say that this is all that we want to do with this page. Actually, yeah, for right now, let's just say that's all we want to do with this page. Now we can come over here to project page linking, and I'm going to make another new file, and let's just call this one cats.html. And again, we get this page, and it tells me at the bottom, if you open it far enough, that you can type HTML:5 and then hit the tab key. So let's do that. HTML:5 tab, and it gives me my full HTML document outline. And so here in the title, we'll say cats. And then if you want, just to keep it really easy, you can go over here to dogs, because we're just going to keep something that's really simple so I can show you how to link pages together. And I'm going to copy all of this text for right now. Copy that, and we'll go back over here to cats. If I click over here in the left panel, it switches them back, and I can also click in these tabs up here, you see. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to go down here in the body, and I'm just going to paste what I already had, except now I can just change where it says dogs. I can say cats, and then I can say this is the cat page. Below is a picture of a cat, and then here we're going to change this out. I'm just going to delete the source for that picture, and then I'm going to delete the alt text, and we're going to update that with something new. So let's just close this, and let's go over here, and we'll do a picture, we'll do a search of cats. And again, it's going to remember the last setting that you had, so I chose 400 by 400, so let's go ahead and just pick a picture of a cat, and then I can view the image, right click, and first of all, I'm going to go ahead and save the image as, and I'll just save it exactly in that same folder, and I'm just going to call it, I'm going to rename this file, and I'll call it cat. How about that? And it says right here it's a JPEG image, so we'll say .jpg. Okay. And I'm going to copy so that we can use it inside of Codepen project. I'm going to copy this address for now, put it in my clipboard, come over here for the image source. I'm going to paste that in, and it looks like the picture is of a cat laying on a blanket. So we'll, in the alt text, we'll put cat laying on blanket. Okay, and then I'll save all and run, and then here we've got a picture of our cat. Okay, next I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go over here to where it says project page linking, and I'm going to click on new file. And this time, let's say it's not going to be a fish. Let's say that it's a bear. Okay, .html. Okay, and by the way, notice that I called it bear instead of bears. Everything else says dogs, cats. Let's say bears. What I can do is I can come over here, I can right click this, and I can choose rename file. And then you see how my cursor, let me blow this up a little bit. My cursor is blinking right here. Otherwise it might not look like it's trying to let you rename it. So I'm just going to kind of cursor over with my arrow key, and I'm going to, excuse me, type the S right there, and I'm going to zoom back out before I commit to this. And I want you to notice up here before I hit the enter key, look up where this tab is. Once I hit enter, you'll see that it updates it for me. So normally, just so you know, normally if you're like on your own computer, you should never rename a file while it's open. This will allow you to do that, but I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that's not something you should do on your own computer. It's a very bad practice, and if you do it, it might really screw a bunch of your stuff up. Okay, so Probably shouldn't even show you how to do that. I probably should have closed it and then told you to do it just for consistency. But anyhow, so let's go ahead and do the same thing here where we go and type HTML:5 tab, and then it gives us our document. So I'll put in the title, I'll put bears. And let's jump over here real quickly to cats, and let's copy what we had in cats. We'll copy that and we'll jump back over here to bears, and in the body we'll paste that. Again, let's change that to bears, and then this is the bear page, and this is a picture of a bear. All right, and then I'm gonna just get rid of what's here in the source, and I'll get rid of what's in the alt, and I'll update that in just a second when I find a perfect picture of a bear. All right, so I'll go over here to my Google image search, type bear, and you'll see again it's stuck with my 400 by 400 picture search, and that looks like a nice one. Let's try that one. Let's right click this, we'll save the image as a bear.jpg, and I'm going to copy this URL up here into my clipboard. We'll come back over here to my project file and I'll paste it in the image source, and I'm just going to say, I think it was a brown bear walking. Okay, and save all, and it should show up down below. It says bears. This is a bear page. Below is a picture of a bear. Okay, so none of these link to each other right now. They're just 3 files that we have inside of our folder called project page linking. So we want to get those so that they will be able to link to each other. Well, the thing is that's kind of cool is that because all 3 of these are inside of the same folder, if we want to make a link to each other, all we have to do is call out the name inside of an anchor tag. So what we can do is create a little navigational toolbar, and let's say that we do that at the bottom of the page. So if we want, we can make, let's make a footer. We never really made a header, which we could have done, but I'm not going to go back and do that at this point. This is just a little test file. So I'm going to make a footer on this page, and right now I'm on the bears page. And actually it doesn't really matter which of the 3 you're on, because we're going to do something that's kind of cool. You'll see that it works really well no matter which page you're working with, because we're going to make a navigation that's going to go exactly the same on all the pages. So in that footer, we're going to create a nav tag, because remember, nav is what is appropriate for any kind of navigation that is about the website and not just some list of resources. So inside that nav tab, we're going to make a list of 3 links. So let's go ahead and we'll do it as a UL, and we'll go ahead and finish that UL, and then now I can do that and it'll be nested. Here, let's get rid of this extra space. Okay, and then inside the UL, I can create a list item, and we'll end that list item. And inside the list item, we're going to create an anchor tag whose href is equal to something. All right, and then we'll end the A tag like that. Okay, and so inside of it, in between the starting A tag and the ending A tag is where your clickable link would go. So we'll put click, and we can change that word in just a second. And so where it says href, now the question that you might have is, okay, well, what do I put there? Well, the thing is that these 3 files are all inside the same folder. It would be sort of like if you were in the same room with 2 other people and you needed to talk to somebody. Let's say you're in the room with somebody named John and another person named Sue. All you would have to do is say their name to get their attention. You just have to say John, right? If John were in a different part of the house, you might have to walk out the door and then go knock on the door of a different room before you could say John's name. That would be like if they were in a different folder, right? But because all of these pages are in the same folder, sort of like 3 people being in the same room, all you have to do is say the name of the file. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say bears.html, okay? And right here where it says click, I'm going to say bears, okay? And then now I can just copy this entire list item. I'm going to copy it into my clipboard. Let's do that so you can see it. And then I'm going to drop down to the next line. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to paste it again. Now I'm going to change where it says bears.html to cats, because we have a file already existing called cats. I'll change this so that it says cats. And then the last one I'm going to change to dogs. And then here I'll change this to dogs so that it looks right on the page. Let's save all and run. And then you'll see down below there's this list here. And if you wanted it to be a little bit more obvious in the nav before you have that list item, you could also put, like a paragraph that says, go to one of these pages, because it's not styled at all. And so it's kind of awkward to have just that bulleted list, but this way, if I hit save and run, you can see down below, it looks more now like a little navigational tool, right? Because it's saying, hey, go to one of these pages. All right, so all I need to do now is I need to take that whole footer like this, okay, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go into cats, and I'm going to put it just below my image, paste it, and I'll save. Okay, and it's preparing the file system, and then now if you want to go down, see right now we're still looking at the bears. So now if you click right here, you can go and say, look at cats, and you can see that we've got that down there. It's working. Okay, and then now let's look in dogs, and just below that picture file, again, we're going to paste that footer with everything in it. Okay, we'll save, and then after it's saved, you can go down here to dogs, hit refresh, and you can see it's there. Okay, and so now if I click on cats, it goes to cats. If I click on bears, it goes to bears. If I click on dogs, it goes to dogs, which is pretty cool from any of the pages that we happen to be on, right? And so that's how you can use this to create a project, which is pretty neat, right? And so what I can do at this point, if I wanted to save that down to my computer, is I could click on export down here, and it's going to give me a full zip. So we'll say download zip. All right, and we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to put it here on the desktop. And you see it's got this crazy big long name, right? And so root code pen -root. And because it's going to take it all the way up to the top. So if I open this now on my desktop, let's go up here, you can see that it decompressed it for me. And I can look at my file right here, or my folder, project page linking, and here are my pages. And so if I double click this and open it up, you can see that it's referring not to HTTP, but my file system. You see that's what that means. If you ever open a file up in your browser and you see that it says file : with 3 forward slashes, that means that it's literally opening the file directly up off of your computer using the file system, and as opposed to the hypertext transfer protocol. All right, and then I can click and go to each one. Now, it is still grabbing these pictures off of the web. I'm going to show you something really quickly. You don't have to remember just yet how to do this, but I'm going to right click this and I'm going to inspect. And what it does is that it opens up the Google Chrome Inspector, or if you're on Firefox or Safari, it'll do the same thing. If you're on Safari, it's not going to work unless you turn your developer tools on in the preferences. But anyway, in Chrome or Firefox, it'll work. And it opens up the inspector, and because I inspected the picture, you can see right here, it's still looking at a web address, HTTPS, and it's got this big long address. So here's the thing, if you wanted to see how you can use the pictures that are actually on your computer, I'm going to minimize this. What I can do is, let's go back to my file system over here. All right, look at it in list view. Okay, so one of the things that I reminded you of before is that because we only, with a free account, have one project, it's always going to download your entire root directory level folder from the web, from Codepen. And from that point, you're just always going to have, your projects downloaded in these PROG file folders. Can't talk all of a sudden. Anyway, and so what you can do is you can actually take that, if you remember, we created this other folder earlier and we made a folder called images. If I just take this images folder, it's got all those little pictures of the bear and the dog food and all that. I can just take that whole folder and I'm just going to drag it and I'm going to drop it into this folder, the project page linking folder that's inside of my downloaded project. I'm going to double click this and we're just going to go straight into that folder. And actually I'm going to rename the dog picture. I'm going to call it dog. So it's really straightforward. And now I can change the links that I'm using from the web links so that they're instead using relative links, so that they go and they look inside of this folder called images and then they find the correct picture inside of this folder instead of going all the way out to the web to some weird address somewhere to go find the picture. The other problem with relying on other people's pictures elsewhere is that if somebody else who controls that website decides to take it down, then your link will be broken and the picture will not show up properly anymore. So it's always good to rely on your own resources if you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this, even though I haven't shown you how to download a code editor, there are some tools that should come natively to a Mac and Windows computer that you can use that will edit in plain text. Now here's the thing, you can't use something like Microsoft Word, that just won't work. If you're on Windows, you can use a program called Notepad. Notepad is going to open it up. You don't have to change any of the preferences, none of the settings, nothing. It'll open it up in pure plain text. There's absolutely no formatting that you have to worry about. If you're on a Mac, I want to show you something that you can do. Instead, you're going to go and do a search for a program called Text Edit. All right, and it should start to pop up. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key. Okay, so you see up here it says text edit, and I want you to go, if you're on a Mac, if you're on Windows, don't worry about this. All you need to do if you're a Windows user is go to your search in the start menu and like Cortana if you're using Windows 10, and search for the word Notepad, and it'll pull Notepad right up if you've never used it. And for text edit, we're going to go over here to preferences, just like this. This will take just a second. And one of the things, these are the default settings right now, where it says new document and where it says open and save. All right, so what I want you to do is go to where it says open and save. I want you to say display HTML files as HTML code instead of formatted text. All the rest of this is fine for right now. And so if you do that, you should be okay now. If you were to right click where it says dogs.html, you right click and you say open with, and by the way, this is also what you're going to do in Windows. You're going to right click and choose to open with Notepad, but on a Mac, you're going to right click and choose to open with text edit. And by the way, if you did not do the preference change like I did before and it starts to look like a formatted website, then you need to go back and fix the preferences like I just showed you, because it should look like this, otherwise you're going to have problems. All right, so to make this a little bit bigger, just really easily, I'm going to select everything and I'm going to do Command plus so that it's bigger on my screen so that you can see it a little bit better. Now, by the way, just so you know, for the semester, I am not going to be using text edit. You're not going to be using Notepad on your computer to work with files. I will later show you how to download something like Komodo Edit or Brackets or some other free color-coded good editor that has autocomplete and all of these error checking things, because this is a nightmare. But what we're doing right now is super simple. You don't have to yet go and download anything and install it. I just want to show you really quickly how something can work really simply. And also the point of this is, in addition to just making this really simple to do, I want to point out the fact that HTML files really are just absolutely plain text files that instead of having a TXT extension, they have a .html extension. So that's really the only difference. They're just unformatted, completely plain text files, but the difference is HTML instead of TXT extension, okay? So anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to come into the code view, and automatically you can see how much harder it is to read probably without having your color coding. So let's make this a little bit bigger still. so you can see it better. And you're going to find where it says IMG, and then look at the SRC, the source value, and you're going to highlight it all the way down to the ending of the .jpeg, and then just hit delete. Instead, what you're going to do, let's take a look at the file system structure over here, and let's take a look here. So what you're going to do is, if we're currently in the dogs.html file, you need to go and find the picture of the dog. And to do that, if you're in a room with two other people named John and Sue, then you would just say, "Hey, John," and start talking to John, right? Because he's in the room, he can hear you. But if he's across the house in a different room, let's say he's in the kitchen, you're not just going to, in a normal speaking voice, say, "John," and start talking to him, because John's not going to hear you. The same is true with files. So if I'm currently residing right now in the dogs.html file and I need to go and talk to dog.jpg, well, dog.jpg is not in the same room. If you take a peek over here, let me close this up so you can see it better. All right, if you take a little peek over here, then what you're going to see is that if I close this up, I have to actually go into a different room to find dog.jpg. So I would have to like go knock on the door of the images folder, right? Knock, knock, knock. And then I can say, "Hey, dog, come on over here," right? So it's the same principle as talking to a person named John, but I'm trying to talk to a file named dog, right? So what I would do is, in this source file over here, I would say images, right? Because that's the door I'm going to knock on, and then I'd put the / because that indicates that it's in a folder. So it would be images / and then I could look for dog.jpg. Say dog.jpg. Okay, that's how it's going to find that file. And this is what is referred to as a relative pathway. Before, in the previous exercise, I had explained to you how you can use absolute pathways, and that's what was there before. Whenever it was looking for that web address for the dog picture, it was going to https : / blah 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 blah, right? And that is what was referred to as an absolute address. It would be, as I used in a different analogy before, sort of like if you were trying to send a letter and snail mail to somebody in Sweden, right? You would have to have a full, big, long absolute address to make sure that it got to them, right? But if you're in the same house as somebody, right? You're not like trying to go out in the universe to talk to somebody in a different house, right? You're in the same house or project folder. Then all you have to do is look inside of the house that you're in, right? Everybody's in the same house over here. They're in this project page linking house. And then they just go, "Oh, I need to go into the images room and look for dog.jpg," right? So that's what you would do over here. You'd say, "I need to go into that images room, knock on the door." That's kind of like what the / is, and then find dog.jpg. I look at this / as sort of like walking through a door. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this file. I'm going to go up here to File, Save. And the thing is, I need to do that now with these others. I need to go to Cats and do the same thing. Let's go to Open With. And let's make that a lot bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and then I'm going to take this big long source, this absolute pathway that I was referring to before. Let's get this big long source, picture of a cat, get that out of here. And now instead, we're going to look in images / and then I'm looking for a file named cat.jpg, which is, you can see that it's up here. You have to make sure that this is all spelled right. Let's save this. And let's finally open Bears. Open With. And by the way, if you just double click it, it's going to keep opening it in your browser. And the reason that it does that is because your computer knows that HTML files are supposed to be opened with something like Firefox or Google Chrome or whatever your default browser is. Okay, so here's my image file. We're going to find this JPEG. And this time I'm looking for images / bear.jpg, like that. Okay, so let's save this. And by the way, if you downloaded a PNG, make sure that you're not just constantly typing JPEG like I am. You have to make sure that it's the right file type. If you type .jpeg and your file extension happens to be .png, then you're going to have a problem. All right, so let's close that. And now what I can do is I can double click Bears so that it opens up in Google Chrome, and I can, it's actually open, so what I need to do is I need to refresh it. I need to refresh that page, and it still looks fine. So if I come over here and I right click and I inspect this file, you see now it's not going to the web anymore, it's going to my own file system to find that picture file, which is terrific. And so if I wanted to just come down here and let's look at cats, same is true for cats, it's working just fine. If I go to dogs, you can see here the picture that it's pulling up is from my own file system. Right, and so that's one of the ways that you can really easily, work on these cool projects in Codepen without actually having to pay for the account, and you can just sort of substitute some stuff later, and now I still have this project up on the web, and I'm good to go. And if you needed to turn something in that like something like this so that I could see it, then what you would do is you would put it up on the mat server in your student directory, and we could look at it on the web that way too. Okay, there's a different tutorial that you can use for connecting to our mat server using FTP.